Hi guys, and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be looking at a tech tree tank. I'm going to be looking at one of the most famous tanks in the world, definitely in World War II I would have said, and basically one of the tanks that really does attract a lot of people to this game. And when they first start playing it, like myself, you want a Tiger. You go straight down the German line, straight towards the Tiger. And 99% of the time you then get disappointed because it's stock and not very good, and you don't know how to use it properly. Well, this is from my own experience, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. You don't know how to use it properly, get a bit despondent with it, and end up just going and doing really bad in it because you don't know how to use it. It has a certain sort of I can't think of the word now. Not respect, reputation, that's the one. It does have a certain reputation for being a particularly tough tank, and indeed it is if you come up against the things that these came up against in World War II, i.e. T-34s, Shermans, the M4s, later on the Easy 8s and the Sherman Jumbos. But yeah, if you come up against that sort of stuff, this is an incredibly tough tank, and it can really bully things like that and really destroy them. But this isn't matched up against those, just those, should I say. It's a higher tier, so it does get matched up against tanks that obviously it never would have come up against in the war, and therefore it sort of balances it out. But nonetheless, it is still a very tough tank and is a very versatile tank. It's not entirely historically correct when it's fully upgraded. I'm no tank historian or military man, but from what I remember reading and sort of looking up about it, basically if you took the engine from the Hammer and stuck it in Tiger 131, you would essentially have what is quite close to a historically accurate Tiger. They were armed with the short 88. They didn't quite have the mobility and acceleration that they do in this, I don't believe. Whereas in here, obviously, they are fairly mobile. They're quite nippy. They've got a decent power to weight ratio for a heavy tank, and they've got the long 88 rather than the short 88. But let's just have a look at it. It's going to be sort of kind of a review and a few tips, hopefully, on how to help you guys if you're struggling with it, or if you're a new player and you are going towards the Tiger, to hopefully not have the same experience that I did. So this one might be a little bit longer, but I'll try and keep it as short as I can. Now, when you first get the Tiger, stock, it's got a 7.5cm KWK-42L70. You will have used this gun. It's not the top gun on the VK3601, which is the tank before the Tiger, but it is one of the guns on there. And if you've been down any of the other lines, you use it on a few tanks down. I think the VK 3001D possibly gets it as a top gun, but with this you do get a better rate of fire than you do on the 3601H. You get 15 rounds a minute, but it's still only 150 pen and 135 damage. You get 194 on your premium rounds, but it can become very expensive firing premium rounds. Aiming time is not too bad for the tank, really. I think the long 88 is a slightly longer aiming time, but we'll look at that in a minute, but 2.3 seconds. And accuracy is not too savage at 0.35. It's not the best, it's definitely not the worst, but it's quite workable. But you do really need to be aiming for weak spots. At this point you've got a hull traverse of 24 degrees a second, which I think possibly stays the same, and you've got a turret traverse of 24 degrees as well. That does go 1 degree less with the top turret, but you've got a view range of 370 metres and a crappy signal range at 310, but that does get better. They all start like that. And a 650 horsepower engine, so it is a bit of a sluggish machine stock, and can be quite frustrating. You've still got the same turret armour, 100 on the front and 80 on the sides and rear, but it is a different turret. It's not the one that you see on mine there. That's the historical turret, and the upgraded one, I think, if I remember rightly, it looks very similar to the top turret on the VK3601H, if not the same one. Could be, possibly. But anyway, you've still got that decent armour on the front, but I don't think you've got the gun mantle as such that you do on this, which obviously increases the frontal thickness on the turret armour. But at this stage, it is, like I say, a sluggish machine. It's quite difficult to use. It's been a long time since I've done it, so I am working from memory here. But I do remember it being quite difficult to use, quite frustrating at times, because a lot of the time you might hit a target but you won't pen it, and definitely when you bottom tier, it's a horrible, horrible gun to have on this tank. Your other option is a 10.5cm howitzer. I can't really recommend using this on the Tiger myself. That's just my personal experience. Some people do go with this one, and you know, they seem to do alright. I've seen a few people with this gun do okay in games, mostly when they've been top tier. But in fact, no, I think you would have to unlock that as well, but that would give you the engine, unless that engine's on anything else. I'm not entirely sure now. I've really confused myself, and I am going to have to check. No, it's not. So if this is your first time down this line, you've not gone down any other lines, you're a new player, you're not going to have that engine, so you are going to have to research that engine. But that one comes with the tracks as well, the package above it, but it does get you the short 88. That's the one that I would say to go for. However, like I say, if you buy this one, it gives you the engine, takes the cost off the one above it. But it is a difficult gun to use, even when you are top tier, never mind when you are bottom tier. You've got very low pen on your armour piercing rounds at 64. You've got 53 on your AP with 410 damage, which on your AP, HE, sorry, which is probably what I'd say to use unless you're feeling quite rich and you want to sling a load of premium ammo down range, which I believe a heat on that with 104 pen, but even that in tier 9 matches sometimes just isn't enough. At least with HE, you're going to do a little bit of damage, but with it having the lower 410 than some of the bigger howitzers, on the thickly armoured targets it's going to be negligible damage. So personally I really can't condone using that. I would save up for the short 88. Very good gun. Also at this point you will have the top engine, so 870 horsepower. It makes a big difference and makes it quite a nimble tank. Well, not nimble as such, because you know that implies turn radius and whatever really good, but you know, it gives it good, a decent power to weight ratio, acceleration, etc. It's quite a mobile tank indeed. Indeed, yes, I sound very posh there, don't I? Indeed. Anyway, yeah, so 870 horsepower. So we'll look at the power to weight ratio shortly. The short 88, 9.5 rounds a minute. It's a good gun, 145 pen, which can be a bit of an issue in your tier 9 matches. Occasionally in tier 8s, Japanese super heavies, that sort of thing, you know, and other stuff, you can, you know, you'll just have to flank them, but you're fast enough to do that. You do get a couple of extra degrees on your hull traverse as well at this point, and your signal range has gone up slightly as well. However, your accuracy has gone down slightly at 0.38, or, you know, may worsened, but your aiming time has got better at 2.3. In your tier 9 matches, you are probably going to have to use some premium ammo, but it is quite, you know, it's not much of a difference, to be honest. It's only 171, but you have got higher damage over the 75mm with 220 average damage. But that is a nice gun. Like I say, at this point you're now nimble and fast enough to work the flanks, and a lot of people do describe the Tiger 1 as the best tier 8 heavy in the game, tier 8 medium in the game, because it does have sort of rate of fire and gun stats and, you know, mobility sort of features that are very, very similar to a lot of the tier 8s in the game. So once you do get that short 88, it becomes quite a workable tank, because you've got the engine as well to go with it. But then this is the one that you really want to be going for. This is your top turret. This is your top gun as well, which is the long 88. Like I said before, your turret armour stays the same, but as we'll see on the module viewer, the gun mantle does make quite a bit of difference. And like I say, you know, this is quite long. I have put a time code in the description for people who want to skip this bit, but I was asked to do this sort of Tiger review, so I thought I'd do it this way, because like I say, a lot of new players go straight for it. Anyway, long 88. Aiming time does get worse, 2.7 seconds, but the accuracy is better at 0.34. Still not the best, but way, way from the worst. You know, it is quite a decent accuracy on it. Having said that, there's probably a couple of clips where you might see it trolling me slightly. Your rate of fire does decrease slightly from the short 88, but not too much, 8.96. Penetration increases a lot though at 203, and then 240 damage, so you get extra bit of damage. Your premium ammunition, which your APCR, goes up to 237 for the pen. It doesn't feel like a large difference again, but it is there, and to be honest, I don't even find myself using a lot of premium ammo in tier 9 matches. I just don't think it needs it. In tier 9 matches, I would say use it like you're in a medium. like a tier 8 medium or something, and again work the flanks and get around there against the heavier things. Use other people to spot, or when they're engaged with other heavy tanks, you work the flanks. When you're top tier, you know, be a bully basically. But we'll go over that in the a bit more in the actual clips. Now at this point your view range has gone up to 380 as well, so it is a fairly decent view range, and your signal range is 710, so there's not going to be any issues there. Now, excuse me, I didn't mean to do that. I will try and edit that out. I'm not going to bother with the supplies and things at the minute with the cost of that, because well, actually no, I will. Well, you're looking at 252 for your standard, 440, well, sorry, 4,400 for your APCR, and 252 again for your high explosive. Consumable wise, I've just gone for the basics. And equipment, well, on mine, and this is mostly because for when I'm not top tier, I've got the coated optics to increase the view range, because it works very, very well in a sporting role, and that's what you want to keep it in when you're in a tier 9 match, and occasionally in tier 8 matches. But a tier 8 match you can go from between quite aggressive against the lower tiers to staying back and using yourself as a sort of medium to long range support, depending on what you're fighting against the higher tiers. I've also gone for the gun rammer just to improve the already good rate of fire, and a gun lane drive because the aiming time is quite poor. Skill wise, this is actually my Tiger 131 crew in it. I do need to be doing them up a bit more, but the crew from this moved on to my Tiger 2. But you definitely want repairs, sixth sense, I would say brothers in arms. Situational awareness is a very good one as well to have on these, just again for those higher tier matches. Clutch braking would be a good one as well, because the hull traverse isn't brilliant on it, so I would say that, yeah, clutch braking's probably one of those. And then really sort of pretty much just trying to have a think off the top of my head. Camouflage maybe later on, possibly, but situational awareness, repairs, sixth sense, brothers in arms. Let's have a look through. Clutch braking I would say would be one of them. Maybe off-road driving, controlled impact would be quite good. You can get some speed up, and against the lower tiers you can do quite a bit of ramming damage. Maybe armourer. I do find myself getting my gun damaged quite a bit in the Tiger, especially if you get into a hull down and people get a bit frustrated and go for your turret and hit your gun. So yeah, that's a possibility. But this one is getting a bit lengthy now, so let's just get into the modules. Well, you've got concealment first is 0.11 stationary, 0.05 moving, so it's a big machine, very big machine, so it's not very stealthy, but then again you don't expect it to be. But your engine translates to a power to weight ratio of 15.29, so it is quite nice for a heavy tank. You've got a forward speed of 40 km an hour, reverse of 12, which is a little bit low, but it's workable. It's never really been a major issue that I can think of for myself, but you do have a 20% chance of firing your engine, which is about as high as it gets, and it's a big engine, takes up the whole back of the tank behind the turret. With the long 88, with the fully upgraded turret, you've got 7 degrees, well, minus 7 degrees of gun depression, but you only have 13 degrees of elevation, which can and has been an issue, sorry. Because if anything gets above you, you can have problems trying to aim up at it with only 13 degrees of elevation, so do keep that in mind. Tracks are a nice solid block, no gaps in there. Terrain resistances aren't too bad, could be better. You want to try and avoid marshy ground as much as possible. It really does affect it, but you've got 1.1, 1.4 and 2.7. Turret on top where you'd expect it. Your radio is in the front right hand corner of the tank. Ammunition blocks, nice big ammunition blocks, roughly about the size of the turret from the top of the engine deck down to almost, I think, the whole floor. So either side, you want to damage an ammo block, just aim below the turret and you've got a damn good chance of doing that. Oh, shell velocity as well is something I normally miss. Very good shell velocity on this, 1,000 meters a second on your standard rounds, 1250 on your APCR, and even on your HE rounds. So if you do take a few for the lower, the thinly armoured targets, 1,000 meters for your HE. So yeah, very good shell velocity on this. So that does affect it, obviously, when you're pre-aiming, when you're leading a target. Crew members, you've got the driver and assistant driver / machine gunner down in the hull, possibly radio operator as well with the radio position. Commander under the cupola. I'm not even going to repeat what I said, it sounded very wrong. And you've got the loader and the gunner up in there as well. And then armour wise, well, it's 100 on the front of the turret and 100 on the front of the hull. The turret is then, I think, did I say 80 sides and rear, and in fact the hull is as well, so it's a very well armoured tank. Definitely a well armoured tank. Let's start having a look at the actual figures though. Well, 21 to 30, it's your hull floor, top of the turret, top of the commander's hatch, and the whole of the top deck. The tracks are quite thick and normally would fall into the 1 to 20, 21 to 30, but these are actually in the 31 to 50 bracket, and don't forget they will act as an amount of spaced armour, so unless you're wanting to track this, try and aim for the space in between the tracks and the hull side there. There is a bit of a sort of overhang track cover type thing off the side of the hull, and it's roughly that you want to be aiming for if you can. If you look as well, the top of the commander's hatch falls into that, and there's a thin strip of, well, it's on the turret front, but it's actually behind the gun mantle. 51 to 70, I would say, well, the upper glacis, yeah, we'll call that the upper glacis. The bit in the middle is the front plate, and then lower glacis down there, but upper glacis and lower glacis you can see there in the 51 to 70 bracket, as are the lower sides of the tank. Now they're supposed to be 80, but that's only the upper sides. The lower sides are a bit thinner, which is why you want to try and aim in that gap there. 71 to 90, that's well, the whole side and rear of the turret, the commander's hatch, the rear of the tank, and the upper sides of the tank as well. 91 to 120, you've got the rest of the front of the turret and the bit behind the gun mantle, and I think the gun mantle itself. Or is that a bit further back? That might be a bit further back actually. But yeah, the whole front of the tank, look, as you can see there, the flatter parts, that front plate, the plate in front of the driver as well, that's just 100mm thick. And then 120 to 160 is the centre of the gun mantle. It's a very, very tough gun mantle. So when you're shooting at the front of one of these things, you want to try and hit that thin strip at the bottom there if you can. If not, and you're up against these and you're quite a tall tank, you want to go for the upper glacis, the sloped part there. Otherwise, you want to try and get the commander's hatch or try and get around it. If you're in one of these things, you want to be angling it to make the most of your armour. This is if you get caught out in the open, and probably about that. Not quite 45, but maybe that sort of angle, and that will increase the armour on the front and on the side. And against lower tier stuff, you really can, just give it a bit of an angle and bounce shot after shot, as long as they're not point blank up close, because even then a Sherman can get through the front of one of these things. Now, I seem to think that the machine gun port used to be a weak spot on this, but I might be wrong. But anyway, I think I've rambled on for quite long enough about this. Tech tree ones do take longer because obviously you've got modules, etc. That are separate on it. So we'll get into the replays now, and I'll try and give you a few more tips in the replays. Right, so here we are for the first of the replays. There's actually 3 of them with this video. It is going to be a long one, I did say that in the garage. Tech tree tanks normally take longer because of all the different modules, and well, with the garage one being so long, I didn't just want to put a couple of short ones on the end, and I think that the 3 that I've chosen will possibly show strengths, weaknesses, and hopefully give you a few ideas of how to play it effectively in different situations. Now, for those of you that have skipped the garage a bit, I was saying that the Tiger is a bit of a newbie magnet, and it seems to be the tank that most people go straight for when they start playing the game, get to it, can't really deal with its stock or don't know how to play it, etc., and end up either getting fed up with it and getting rid of it, or just carrying on doing really quite poorly in it for a while until they learn how to use it properly. And I was one of those people. It's a very famous tank. I started, I wanted to get to the Tiger. I got to the Tiger. I'd, you know, seen them destroying things on the battlefield and destroying myself, you know, on the battlefield. Got to it, struggled with its stock, got it upgraded, just didn't know how to use it, and in turn did very, very badly and ended up getting rid of it. So I thought I'd do this on it, you know. Somebody did ask me to do it on Twitter, so I thought it was a good idea because, like I say, you know, a lot of people go straight for this. So that's kind of who it's aimed at, really, is the sort of newer players or anybody that is struggling with this a little bit. And you know, I'm not claiming to be any great expert on it. These are sort of 3 average matches for me, 2 tier 7s and a tier 8. I did try and get a tier 9 to sort of show it, but there was one that was alright, and it didn't really show it properly. Well, it didn't show what I wanted, really, to be honest. So anyway, here we are. So I'm top tier in this match, so I can afford to be quite aggressive. There are certain tanks I've got to be careful of. Now, the champion, you can see the angling that I took against the champion. The 12T, he is, I think it's 12T, he is a bit close, so, you know, he could do some damage to me. But you see there, when I turned and I was more flat on towards the champion, he actually penned the front, but when I got the angle to him, he didn't. And you don't want to be getting in too close. I mean, if I, you know, went up really close, you know, within sort of 50 to 100 metres of that champion, there's a good chance he'd pen the front whether I'm angled or not. Well, maybe not 100 metres, I don't know. I'm never really very good with the distance judging on this, but anyway. What's that T29? He's 280 metres away, and he's got the 90mm. Now, I think it was him that was actually penning me from a distance. I didn't notice if they were standard or premium rounds. I'm not too sure what colour the tracer was. But this one, it was a bit of a funny match. I didn't think I was actually going to do much in it, but it ended up alright in the end. But you can see that slightly longer aiming time. And like I said, in the garage it is longer than the previous guns that you have on this, albeit possibly not longer than the howitzer. But it's not too bad. I've got the vertical stabilizer on here, and again the accuracy isn't too bad. It does, you know, it does trolley a little bit at times, but you know, that's 450 meters, and I'm hitting him pretty effectively, and it's not taking long for it to get there either. Like I said before, it's got a very good shell velocity, but this is one of the other ways that Tigers, you know, are very effective. And I didn't come round this way to sit back up here and snipe. It's just opportunity. But they're good at it. You know, they are a very you know, once it's fully upgraded, it's a very versatile tank. But that's the sort of thing you want to be doing when it's a tier 9 match. That sort of gameplay. If you can get around on the flank, you're not going to be able to do it maybe straight away in the match. Obviously, you know, you need to know where the enemy tanks are, so you want to sort of move cautiously forwards, keep an eye out for where they might be on the map, try and, you know, have a look at the team list at the beginning and see where you think those tanks are likely to be going, and try and position yourself accordingly to get the flanking shots in. But like I said, this is a tier 7 match. I was fairly aggressive up at the top. Like I said before, the angling towards the champion, even at that fairly short range, was enough for him to bounce. And even at this range against the Oni, this gun's got enough power to go through it, and you know, they're a tough tank. But the other thing you'll notice as well with this video is the speed of it. You know, it can get going and get along quite happily. And it didn't used to be like that when Will of the Tanks first came out on the PlayStation 4 last year, was it, or just before Christmas? Well, I mean last January, was it? I think possibly. Anyway, when it first came out, you know, I went straight to the Tiger, and it didn't have the 870 horsepower engine. I think it just had the 700 one, the one that's in the Hammer, and it was quite sluggish. But now it is a very mobile tank. And even a match like that, where it looked as though it wasn't going to go very well, and I came out of it with 3,000 damage and a high caliber. So, you know, the Tiger 1 can turn it around quite quickly, but it is, when you're top tier, it is all about angling. and knowing how close you can get to certain tanks. And that's the trick to it. You know, there's a lot of tanks when you're in a tier 7 match. You know, you're going to be seeing maybe tier 5s, tier 6s, and a lot of the tier 5 mediums, a lot of the tier 5 heavies. You can be very aggressive with and get quite close to them. A bit of angling should sort you out and you'll be fine. When you're getting up to like some of the tier 6 heavies, you've got to be a bit more careful. But you can side scrape in this very well as well. You'd have to be more careful in a tier 9 match than you would in a tier 7 or 8 match, because obviously they've got more penetration in the first place, and some of the tier 9s could probably put a shell straight through the front of your turret, you know, through gun mantle and all. But this one, it's a tier 8 match, so like I say, couldn't get a tier 9 or a decent one that showed what I want it to, but hopefully this tier 8 one should show you, and a lot of the things from this. I mean, like I said before, you know, I'm not claiming to be any expert. I'm just trying to give a few tips and maybe tactics. People have different play styles and play differently, so maybe some of the tips that I give you wouldn't suit your play style. Maybe some of them would, you know, that sort of thing. And this is, like I say, aimed sort of more toward the new players, like I said before. But hopefully, at least some of these tips and sort of, you know, if you watch the way I use the tank and place the tank and what I'm doing, hopefully it might help you out in yours a little bit. But I'm still learning, everybody's still learning, you can never know everything, and you can always improve. Now, if I was in a tier 9 match, I would be a bit more wary about coming to the city on this map. I know before I said you could side scrape in it, and you can in a tier 9 match. One thing you do have to try and be careful of, this is, you know, regardless of what match, when you're side scraping, is your commander's hatch. Obviously it's on the left hand side of your turret. If you can, try and side scrape off a corner so that it can hide your commander's hatch slightly. If not, you know, don't worry too much, just don't sit out there so people can get shots at you. You're going to have to move back in. When you're top tier against a lot of tanks, you wouldn't have to. There's not much that can get through your gun mantle as well, I don't think, at tier 7. But yeah, tier 6, M6s, yeah, they, with a 90mm, they can be a bit of a problem to you. But yes, I digress. Anyway, tier 9 match, I'd be a bit more wary about bringing it down to the city. I would have probably, I would have liked to have gone out into the field, but most of our team's out in the field, unfortunately. But that's where I probably would have liked to be, trying to get around the flanks, put those shots in, maybe at the beginning of the match, sitting back and providing support, and then sort of when there's a few less tanks on the field and we know the locations a bit more, that's when I probably would have moved in and worked the flanks. But it's a tier 8 match, not many people have come this way. You can side scrape effectively, like I've said before, probably many times. And so yeah, I wasn't too worried about coming down into the city with it. But I am going to keep my distance, I think, a bit more in this one, with it being a tier 8 match. There's plenty of stuff in here that can get straight through the front armour. There's a T32 in here, you know, 198mm of pen. I think there's an STA1. They've got about 212 if they're fully upgraded. So, you know, there's plenty of stuff in here. The AMX M4, for instance, I mean, that's tier 7. I think that's got about 212 pen, something like that. But I don't think it's got the rate of... No, in fact, no, I'm sure it hasn't. No, it hasn't. It's not got the rate of fire of this. You know, that's the difference. Although the T32 could have been in a completely different match that I'm thinking of altogether. The STA1, I think, is this one, though. I think the T32, I'm thinking of the wrong one. But just look at how quick it is as well. I know this is on, you know, good ground, so it's going to get the best out of its speed. But I do like to just use the handbrake because its hull traverse isn't brilliant, so I would have had to take that really wide, but just a bit of a flick of the handbrake and you can get it round there, especially when you're on roads like that. Couldn't quite get the Skoda, and again, this was one of those matches where it didn't look like I was going to do much, and I was getting a bit, you know, I'm not going to do anything in this one. But again, the Tiger can quickly turn it around. There's still a fair few enemy tanks left, just over half the team. Although I've now managed to take down Artie. And Well, I've worked my way round onto the flank, and that's the other thing about this, that if you are at one end of the map, something starts going wrong at the other, like somebody's got anti-cap and starts capping, there's a good chance, I mean, depending on the map, there's the odd one that you might not be able to, but there's a good chance you'll be able to get back and intercept. Now, see if we can get that Skoda, yep. And you can see at this range, I mean, I'm taking a few hits now, I'm not sure what they're from, possibly TDs. There's the SU-85, poor little tier 5, over half his health gone. Yeah, I don't know if it was a TD or what that was there, but at that range, quite a few of those were bouncing. And that's what I mean about the lower tiers, they're tier 6s. Now there's something over there. I'm not sure, I think it was the STA-1 that's just penned me. But I managed to get him. I've got to be careful though, because I am exposing the top of my turret a bit. But yeah, sorry, digressed again. The tier 6s were bouncing. It could have even been that 3601H that was bouncing as well. So at that sort of range, some of those were flat on and they bounced, and that just gives you an idea of the sort of toughness of this armour. And to use it to its full potential will take a bit of practice, because like I say, you've got to learn what you can and can't get close to, you know, what you've got to be careful of. That was very fortunate that somebody just saved my arse there, because he managed to get alongside me with his auto loader, so he punished me a little bit for that one. Should have aimed properly at the STA-1 there. Oh, and I missed again. Pulled back, that was poorly aimed. And that's it, that's the match. Like I said, that was a tier 8 match, and you know, I sort of got down the other end of the map, only having a couple of hits scored, and finished off with just under 2,500 damage done. And a Confederate medal, so yeah, quite happy with that round as well. 965 blocked. But because it was a tier 8, that's why I was more cautious. Stayed back, ended up going around on the flank anyway, even though I sort of went to try and protect the town a bit and side scrape in case there was an enemy push that way. But got round onto that flank, and the rate of fire, the accuracy, you know, you can really pull it around in a short amount of time, do a decent amount of damage in it if you just know, yeah, how to use it. Like I say, how to angle it, what you know, I keep saying it, but it's the most important thing, you know, what you can and can't get close to. A T29 in the open, I'd be a bit wary, you know, maybe at a distance. You do have the thicker armour, but they have the, in fact no, I think T29 is 102 and it's angled, so yeah, you know, T29 in the open I'd be wary of, especially if it's got the 105mm. At a distance, if it's got the 90mm, maybe angle it, you might get away with it, but it, you know, you're best off side scraping, that sort of thing. But when you're top tier against lower tiers, you can pretty much bully them with almost impunity. You don't want to get too confident or a bit too cocky, but yeah, things like Shermans and things, you know, a couple of 100 metres, bit of an angle to your hull. I'm not going to say a degree because I'm rubbish at geometry, so there you go. But yeah, a bit of angle to your hull, like I showed you in the garage, and like I've, you know, hopefully shown you in some of these clips. And they'll pretty much bounce every time unless they sort of hit your commander's hatch or that thin strip along the bottom, and that's, you know, if you are struggling to pen one of these things, that's where you want to go for, commander's hatch or that thin strip just underneath the sort of frontal, well, the frontal plate with the tracks on. And if you can't do that, you've got to try and get around the side. Now I hate coming up against these in my snakebite, because quite often that can't even pen the side. So yeah, I do end up finding premium out of that. Now this match, again, bit of a dodgy one. Top tier, there was a light tank that came down this side on our team. I didn't feel too worried about going down here on my own. I know that sounds a bit arrogant, but I wasn't too concerned. I did think that most of the enemy team would go for cap, they normally do, and It just seems to be something about, I mean, I know I've seen it on other maps, but it happens more often on this map encounter than any other. So yeah, I didn't think there was going to be too much of a push, and there's quite a few rocks that I can side scrape off and go hull down in as well. But sometimes the key to it is, you know, just to keep moving. And again, it's not a bad match. It's just, you know, it's an average match for me. And again, started off looking pretty crap, but ended up, you know, doing all right in it. And I think the reason I've chosen this one is for a particular point. As you can see, you know, Cap is very much threatened, and I was getting a bit frustrated at this point. Some probably, yeah, definitely some colourful language and insults thrown about, you know, along the lines of most of the team went that way. Please interrupt the Cap, please, but not quite as polite. So I decided to go along there. There wasn't really much that I'd seen, you know, the other way. The light tank had not really seen much up on the hill. There's a light tank over there, but it's when I get in there and sort of hopefully might show you kind of how to survive a little bit if you end up in an up close brawling situation. So you can take down the T-37. There we go. And that's one gun that's not going to be shooting me in the back while I'm trying to do something about these guys. Now we've got an enemy Tiger. I've got the side and should have let it aim. Yep, he's seen me now. So I've been spotted. Now against again, well, a fully upgraded Tiger, we've got to be careful. You know, I can pen him quite easily. He can me, but luckily he's done. I didn't have quite the right angle when that Jagdpanther hit me, so he did pen and do some damage. But now I'm going to push forwards. And I was hoping to use the wreckage of the Tiger to protect myself. I didn't realise quite how far back it was. So I'm now up against the Black Prince. They have the 17-pounder, but he's bounced off my side once. I think he's got the 17-pounder, it does look like it. I should not have sat still there, that was my mistake. Now, keep the angle and keep moving backwards and forwards against him. And one, obviously it just makes you harder to hit. That's something useful for any tank. But as you could see, he did actually bounce a couple of times. And because of the angling, it just, you know, when you angle, it thickens your effective armour. No, makes your armour, no, yeah, makes it better. Angle make better. There you go. So, got in here, I have taken a bit of a beating. But I managed to take down the Jagdpanther, a Tiger, a Black Prince, and the KV-3. Oh, and the T-37 in a very short period of time. And that is thanks to the very good penetration on this. You know, this Tier 7 heavy. The very good rate of fire as well. The decent accuracy. You know, it is a good tank. It's a damn good tank. But I did get taken out. It was a win. It was down to both the RTs and our RT. It was very well played, and he won that one for us. But came out of that with just under 2,200 damage done. Again, just used average rounds, but hopefully, I know it was a bit of a long one, I do apologise, but yeah, hopefully that may help anybody who's struggling with that tank a little bit. You know, it might give you a few better games and a bit more of an idea how to play it if you're new to it. And like I said before, this was kind of aimed more at the sort of newer players. But I hope it's been useful. I really do. I hope you may have learnt something. If not, and you've just watched it for entertainment value, well, I hope it's done that as well. Anyway, I won't be back tomorrow with a video because it's Saturday, so I hope you all have a good weekend, and I'll be back Sunday with a random destruction. So, yeah, take care out there, and I'll catch you next time. See you later.